The Bigfooty Port Adelaide podcast is proudly sponsored by New Vision.
My team, kinda power. I love the power. I love the power.
Hi and welcome to the Bigfooty Port Adelaide podcast. This is a weekly show dedicated to all things Port Adelaide Footy Club. I'm your host Macca 19, and joining me as always as co-host is Fishing Rick 4. How are you, buddy?
Very good, Craig. Very good. What about yourself?
Always good, buddy.
You're not pining over those tips, are you?
No need to talk about that just yet, I think.
All right, no dramas.
Wasn't good. I don't know what I was thinking picking Collingwood, for God's sake. I don't know why I picked Collingwood. Oh well, these things happen.
It does.
That's it. Now, we've got a bit of a special guest on for this evening. He doesn't have a Port Adelaide link at the moment, but he'll be able to give us a bit of an insight into the AFL system, especially as a junior coming through. We're talking with former Sydney Swans scholarship holder and current Central District footballer Jackson Potter. How you going, mate?
Good, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, good. Great to have you on.
Oh, great to be on.
We might as well get straight into it. Just get a bit of a background on your football and how you landed as a Swan scholarship player.
Well, I grew up in Sydney. I came from a club, Penny Hills Demons, and they've had a few pretty good footballers like the McVeigh brothers, Lenny Hayes, Kieran Jack, and Brandon Jack now. So I grew up, It was a pretty footy-orientated area, like the Hills. So I was a bit lucky in that regard compared to other parts of Sydney, but my dad is from WA, so that's how I got into footy, and then played with them for a while, and then played local rep teams, and went through this New South Wales system, the rep sides, and then we played a carnival at Riverview, St Ignatius College in Sydney, and got picked by the scholarship system, Sydney Swans at the age of 15, and went through playing 16s and 18s nationals, and then was on the was a full-time player when I was 19 during the Sydney Swans premiership year.
Oh,
so that's a witness to that, which is pretty special.
Beautiful. How did you think the Swans Academy sort of helped your football development?
Yeah, I think the big thing, it gave you insight to sort of the professional lifestyle and what is required, because a lot of it goes, they do a lot of training as a team, but a lot of them do extras, so that gave you a good insight into that. And I think the big thing they harp on in the academy is just trying to catch up on skills compared to some other states like SA, for example, and Vic. So it was all about sort of trying to play catch up. The majority of the kids had to play catch up. There might be a select few who've grown up in an area or around families where they kick the footy as much, but it's just sort of that. We always thought that the top 5 New South Wales players could go with, in the 18s, could go with the Vic, but their top 15 were probably just as good as the top 5. So it's just that depth, which is the problem.
Yeah. And how much input?
Just trying to sort of grow that depth.
Yeah, for sure. How much input did the Swan senior coaches and playing group have in the academy with your own personal development? Did you spend a lot of time with those sort of players and coaches?
Yeah, so when I was younger, when I was about 15, 16, Stewie Dew and Daniel McPherson were my first coaches.
Yep.
So that's how I came to Centrals in the end, was because of Stewie Dew.
Oh,
and
fantastic.
So that connection helped, and then, it went on from then. And when I was 16, 17, playing in the Swans reserves, you start to, you're in the eyes of the senior coaches a bit more, so they can if they see something there, they don't shy away from maybe just putting a little input in, which is good. And I've had a fair bit to do with Paul Roos as well, so I had a few conversations. He helped me out a bit because when I started as the senior coach, and then when I was coming later into my scholarship the scholarship holding at the club, he was the head of the academy, so he was actually a good sort of insight into what you need to do. And another one was Chris Smith, who was also a head of the academy as well.
Awesome. Were there any players that you played with as part of the academy that went on to AFL careers in the last couple of years?
One younger than me was Brandon Jack.
Okay.
I played a little bit of footy with him because he was a year younger, and there's some sides we didn't play in, but I played a bit of the Swan reserves with him. There's a few others like Nathan Gordon, who's at Richmond Tigers now, who played for Roosters last year and was my housemate. I played a lot of footy from the age of 16 up when I was playing the Swan reserves, so played a fair bit with him, and he's gone on to bigger and greater things, you could say, at Richmond, and hopefully good luck to him. But there was a fair few kids that have gone on. So
Stuff.
so it's pretty hard to sort of try and remember now. But but Brandon Jack, I think, is the big one that sort of just shined out. He's probably the perfect example of what the academy's done for him. So he's done very well with these chances he's given.
Yeah, I was just wondering. You said you had a bit of an influence with Stewie Jew early on. Did you think back then that he was pretty switched on? Because to be honest, I never expected Stewie to get like a senior assistant role. So he must be quite switched on with the footy strategy side of things as a coach.
Yeah, he is. The difference I found was when I was 15, 16, I always knew he was a very smart player, and the things that he more gave you tips when I was 15, 16 just about my actual personal game. And then there was a couple of years off where he went up to the assistant role when I was still 15, 16, so I didn't see him as much. But then when I was there, when I was 19, and I went to all the midfield meetings, just his insight and depth into knowledge around all the study he's done, and you sort of pick his brain a bit, and he was actually very good had very good strategy in terms of trying to beat other teams' midfields. And I think 2012 was a perfect example when he was the midfield coach, and Swans pretty much had the best midfield in the comp. So I think early on it was personal, like his tips he can give to you personally, but then later on when I was a bit older, I saw in the meetings what he brings to a whole group, which was the strategy and just smart little things that he could just mention.
Yeah. And I looked up an article from yours when you came over last year. I think last year was your first year, and it made reference you still have dreams to try and get back into AFL, and that's one of your major goals still, I would imagine, because you'd only be 20.
Yeah. So it's one of my big goals is to try and get back into AFL, but I think I don't want people to make the mistake that that just means I'm using Central as a ride, but I don't think that at all. I think I'm pretty loyal to a club, and Central's, even though that's maybe a goal down the track, and it'd be great if it happened, but if it didn't, I'm still going to play for Central's, and that's the main priority, is winning a premiership at Central's. Everything else will happen if it happens, but it's a team sport, so I don't think my individual needs really go past the team. So that'd be great if it happened, and it's what you dream as a kid, but if it doesn't happen, then I still get a lot of enjoyment out of playing at Central District Football Club and trying to win a SANFL premiership.
Absolutely. So how have you transitioned from New South Wales to South Australia? Because that's a pretty big shift, really.
Yeah, well, it wasn't I didn't think it was going to happen when I left Sydney. Or when I was going to thinking of leaving Sydney, I thought maybe I'd have to go to Melbourne or somewhere in Melbourne, but because I came over, Nathan Gordon, who was trying to get me to come over to Adelaide because he was going to be coming anyway, and then I got a call from Chris Grant saying they were interested to fly me over and have a chat, and if I had any vision, so I could send it over to the club, and I was happy to, because there was an option just in case something had worked out. I'm glad it did. And then Luke Harville picked me up from the airport, and the rest is history. Now I'm at the Centrals.
Yeah, it's excellent. And so, what about the Sydney Reserve standard to the SANFL standard? Can you notice much difference in the two leagues?
Yeah, it was early on. It was a big difference. There's a massive difference. When I was about 16, playing the reserves, Swans reserves, it was a big difference. We were only playing really Canberra teams, but I think when they created the NIAFL, when Brisbane Lions reserves and Gold Coast and GWS reserves came in, you'd have probably, what I noticed, that the standard was really high for those a few clubs that you played, but then it'd be a massive drop off the next week. So it was that inconsistency of the standard, which was pretty hard to trying to get a consistent. If for the guys who were trying to impress to get into the seniors, you couldn't really, they try and tell you have to back up week in, week out, when you weren't really playing quality opposition every week. So, but the SANFL, it's you're playing very strong teams every week, and they're pretty much, a lot of them have played AFL before or could be on AFL lists. So the standard is, I think, consistently a lot better.
Before we go on to reviewing yesterday's trial game, we might have a quick chat about the AFL reserves team issue. Obviously, it was the biggest issue in South Australian footy in 2013. There were plenty of Doggies fans yesterday who were quite vocal in their disagreement on the topic. Would love to hear your thoughts, Jackson, on the two AFL teams coming into the SANFL this year and how it's going to be different from last year.
I don't think. Me personally, it's hard for me to say because I haven't been in the SANFL league for as long as others have. But I guess it's sort of going away from that whole sort of that pride out. It's just SA footy and no AFL influence. Only for the fact that there was some, a few sort of listed players spread out among the comp, and they don't want that to turn out sort of similar to the VFL. But I think the big thing I saw yesterday was how, which is fair enough, AFL orientated the team was. Watching Port play, like their game plan, I think will change some of the way other clubs have to defend, or even the way they have to move the ball as well. But the big difference I saw, it's a bit hard to say because the Swans reserves, because they were playing in a lower standard comp, they had a lot of restrictions on them. So, for example, when they went into finals, they were only allowed 12 or 13 listed players, and the rest had to be top-ups. When in the SANFL, I don't think there's sort of I don't know the details, but I don't think there's sort of any sort of restrictions put on the Port Adelaide club. So, yeah, in that regard, I don't think I don't have a problem with it because I've been in the situation probably the Port Adelaide players are in at the moment. But yeah, I think it's done, and it's got to be everyone has to deal with it now, I guess.
Rick, your thoughts, mate?
Sure. What you said, you saw the style of play become similar with the two teams, say from Port Adelaide's example. Surely for you in the Central District's perspective, though, it should actually in a way help you sort of evolve your game as well from an SANFL perspective, because you guys are going to have to adapt and become a little bit more skilled as well to compete with them, especially when they got full lists like yesterday, but that's not always going to be the case. Yeah,
exactly. And I think people taking out the game yesterday, they've got to realise that we didn't have a full strength side in as well. We had about 7 out. So I don't think the margin will be that big, and they had a very strong side in. So the way they played, all credit to them. Like the first quarter, I think at quarter time, there was only a couple of points in it, and then they sort of got their rhythm on, and we sort of dropped our defence, like you could say, and then our defence dropped a bit, and they were just too good and skillful. So I think it showed some signs we have to improve. And to be honest, like that's the way the game's going, and they're fit. They're a very fit side, and we just have to be trying to be as fit as them and try and lock them down. But you can tell that short kicking game that they're trying to implement is going to be a strong part of the league, you could say, when you play Adelaide and Port Adelaide. But that's the nature of the game, and we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, you could definitely see some similarities to how the Power played and also how the Magpies set up and tried to get that really quick sort of run and carry and lots of quick handballs and trying to find space. And it's not something that you normally see at SANFL level. It's normally sort of long kicks, sort of old school traditional style footy. But it's certainly going to be quite a big shift in the way it's played this year. Yeah,
exactly. And as I said, once we get into the season, it's a different story. Like people got to remember, it's still trial matches, and every team's improving. So, and to all credit to them, they implemented their game plan really well, and we probably didn't implement our game plan very well at all. So, it's just a waiting game. We'll improve, and we'll see how they'll probably get better as well. But I think the big thing is for them is the seniors like Port Adelaide Power drawing on their stocks. So I think it'd be interesting to see how they go through the whole year.
Yeah. I guess there's still some players to come back into that Maggies lineup, sort of like Paul Stewart, Louis Stevenson, Campbell Heath, Andrew Moore probably play some games there. Dom Cassisi, you'd expect might drop back for a few as well. So, yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see who plays and how that sort of works in as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, is you got to deal with it. But it's very odd for a team to go a whole year without a lot of or a fair number of injuries, and I think, I don't know what they're going to do, but when the senior team is travelling interstate, then I think they might have to take a couple of emergencies with them as well. So there's probably 2 players that will travel with the team. Yep. So that takes maybe a couple away or one. So then again, that's just how it is, and we'll see how we go.
We might as well talk about the trial game yesterday. Obviously, it was between Port Adelaide and Central Districts at Elizabeth Oval. Port ended up running out fairly comfortable winners by 65 points. They won 14 goals 11 to 4 goals 6. Rick, both you and myself were there, and Jackson as well. I thought it was a pretty sloppy game. There was lots of errors from both teams, especially early on. I think both teams sort of settled in sort of from the second quarter onwards. As mentioned, Central had 6 or 7 key guys in the stand, so they certainly weren't at full strength, especially in their midfield. Rick, what were your thoughts on the game, mate?
Yeah, as Jackson said, Central's had about 5 or 6 players out of their team. We had a few still missing out of ours, and the skills were a little bit sloppy. But I thought both sides were running hard, and you could see that everyone was still blowing. So obviously it's the pre-season, and but from the second quarter onwards, Port just seemed to have that added little bit of fitness at this point in time to the Central's players.
We did have a very strong midfield and defensive group out there yesterday. Obviously, especially defence. I think we stopped them kicking goal for around about 2.5 quarters from about the 5-minute mark of the second quarter through to the last couple of minutes of the game. Obviously, we had Bobby Carlisle and Cam O'Shea out there who've played a lot of AFL footy in the last couple of years. The midfield was very strong as well. The forward line remains a little bit of a worry for me at the Magpies level, especially with Mason Shaw going off injured yesterday. He went off at about quarter time with a hand injury, and there were photos on Instagram today with him with his hand all bandaged up, so he may be out for a little bit of time there.
Yeah, look, I thought the defensive structure of the team was very strong. Alipati Carlisle obviously was going to add a big backbone to that, and we did seem to have very strong midfield run. We have got some good gut runners there with former Centrals player Sammy Cahoon in our side, and also and Tom Logan, which they generated quite a strong run for us, and Slattery was also very serviceable, and Newton came up with some good cameos as well. So. The depth of the squad was actually very strong, and and I thought there was promise for both teams, and I thought also Central's recruit. I don't know if I can even say the name. Jackson might have to fix me up there.
Yep.
Retzlaff, that's it. I thought he showed a bit of promise, and
he's a big Retzy.
Absolutely.
Played for Box Hill last year, and the year before that he was with Brisbane with Tom Collier on the list. So I think he's going to be really good up the front there for us, and just gives us a mobile target to kick to. And he's pretty agile for a big unit. And then and Johan Wagner, who showed it a lot as well with his speed. So I think it gives us mid something to be kicking to, so which will help us a bit.
Fantastic. Rick, who are your best players for the Maggies, mate?
Well, I thought Tom Logan was very serviceable again, and of course he had to come off the ground bloody headed, didn't he? So he had his normal game. I also thought Cam Hitchcock was very, very agile and nimble around the ground, and it's just surprising he's not adding any body size to him though, from what I can see in the years he's been in the AFL system, and I think that could be his probably only detriment. Otherwise, he moves very well. And I thought Aaron Young was quite good, and Slattery was. They were the noticeable players for me.
Yeah, got to agree with most of that. I thought Hitchy was probably best on ground. He had just a fantastic all-round game. He's such a good player at SANFL level. He's so slippery and effective around the goals, and especially in the midfield as well. He just knows how to get space on his opponent. Benny Newton, I thought, had a really good, solid four-quarter effort. Didn't do anything that really stood out as being exceptional, but he just continuously got the ball time and time again. And his ability to get space at contests is fantastic. Get his hands free and dish out the handballs. Aaron Young was brilliant, especially at the stoppages as well. He kicked 2 goals. Such a good player as a centre midfielder at SANFL level now these days. Could probably play a bit more AFL footy this year, I would think. And Jakey Johansson as one of the SANFL guys, he's just such a little pocket rocket. He's so small but so quick. Kicked the first goal of the game, set up the play quite a bit, and his defensive pressure was fantastic.
And who's your tip outside of yourself, Jackson, that people should watch out for in 2014 as a bit of a bolter in the SANFL?
Oh, there's a few. I think Travis Schiller is due for a really good year, and but another one that probably that's one of the young blokes coming up that I think probably someone coming into the team from another club. I think Timmy McIntyre is going to have a big year this year. I think he'll be really good for us, and he's another one will be in this week. So I think it's just got a lot of improvement Central will have off last year, and see how we go.
Excellent. And what about you, Macca? Have you got any suggestions from any of the Port boys that you reckon you'll be looking out for that might make a move?
Benny Harron, I think he's such an impressive player. He was on the Sydney Swans list a couple of years ago. He had a bit of a non-existent year last year, but so far this pre-season he's played in about 7 different positions and excelled in each of them. He can play in the ruck, he can play full forward, centre half forward. He also played at full back in the trial against South Adelaide and did such a great job. So he's one that I'm looking forward to seeing how he can develop this year, and I think he's a bit of a chance to get back on an AFL list as well.
I liked Port's other ruckman, Brueggemann. I thought he's got good size about him, and he was reasonably nimble around the ground, and hopefully he can show something for the Maggies this year. Yeah,
big lump of a lad. He's a big boy. Not sure where he's come from. He just looks like such a big country footballer. Kicked a couple of goals. I didn't think he was too impressive in the internal trial against the Power lads a few weeks back, but his last couple of weeks in the SANFL trials have been really, really good. Now, we'll put the pressure on a little bit here and find out you guys your top 4 for the AFL this year. Jackson, I might start with you, mate. Who do you reckon will finish top 4?
Top 4. Not in any order, but I think Hawthorn, they won it last year, so they'll be at the top. I'll throw Sydney in there. Fremantle will be the 3rd, and who else would I'll probably have to throw I might have to put, I reckon Essendon. Might be a goer from what they sort of showed on round 1. Just hopefully they can keep the things off the field going.
They've
got some good tools though, don't they?
Yeah, I think just when you have class players like Goddard and Watson, and like Goddard and Watson really took the game apart on the weekend. So if they stay fit, they can be anything. And Danaher, if he can keep playing well, be a tall target for them. I think he could be one that could be one of the most improved in the comp from last year, even though he only played a couple of games for them. But yeah, I think Essendon, they could be the underachiever, or the quiet achiever, sorry.
Yep.
And what about, have you got an SANFL top 4? Central's obviously in it.
Yeah, put Centrals in. I think Eagles, they've done a fair bit of recruiting, so I reckon they'll be pretty strong this year. You'd have to put Norwood in there as well, and probably North Adelaide.
I've gone for Hawthorn. I think that's pretty predictable. They're looking pretty strong, and their pre-season's been fantastic, really, from where they've come from. Freo, you'd have to say, are pretty much a lock. Again, just after what they did last year, they're going to be, almost unbeatable at home. And I've actually got Sydney dropping out. I can't see. I think Sydney might fall off a little bit. I've got Port in there. I'm quite optimistic that. Yeah, I am. I'm putting my neck on the line. I know people will say it's biased, but I do think Port can make the top 4 this year. I think their fitness is now becoming a strong psychology in the AFL. For people are all talking about it, and I think the players are going to believe it. And it's probably a good question for Jackson. I guess I'll ask him in a sec about that sort of psychology. And I've got Essendon in the top 4 as well. But I mean, the players at Port, Jackson, with all the talk about everyone talking about their fitness, internal and external, do people start actually, the players, will they start believing that?
Like the Port players, or?
Yeah, the Port players, and even the opposition players.
Well, I think it's hard to say. As an opposition player, like, you can't control what they've done in their pre-season. You can only control what you've done. And personally, I think we have Centrals are pretty well known for having a pretty tough pre-season. I think we've had a great pre-season in that regard, and I think that for them, I think it's sort of a badge of honour they can wear. To have people commenting so early on in their Caesar campaign that their fitness is amazing. I think well done to them. They've obviously shown in the pre-season that they can work pretty hard. But it's just like pre-season sets you up for the year, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee you a grand final spot. So hopefully they can keep it up and see how they finish top 4, as you say, Rick. But I think it's. I think when it comes to opposition, you just don't really think about that at all. Like, you just got to worry about what you do.
Yeah, for my top 4, I've got Freo coming top. I've got them only losing 2 games for the year. I reckon they'll absolutely dominate this season. I've got Sydney coming second with the buddy factor, and Tippett free and fit for the whole year, hopefully. I reckon they'll be pretty hard to beat. I've got Hawthorn third, and I've got Richmond in 4th spot. I reckon they've got a bloody good list and are ready to go bang, really.
And I guess one final thing is, Jackson, I've got to ask you before we go.
Yep.
Him and I have trained together. People obviously would know this. We've trained a bit with Brad at BST, who has a bit of an influence with the Doggies players, and Jackson's pretty whippy around our little 600-metre block there. But have you heard rumours that I'm actually catching your time, Jackson? Are you getting a little bit nervous that I might beat you shortly?
Yeah, I don't know if there are rumours that you were coming up to me on the weekend and make sure you were telling me, but I've heard the rumours, you could say, and it's good to hear. And might have to get down there the next couple of weeks and egg you on.
Good work, mate. Good work. I think your time's safe with me anyway.
Okay.
Good stuff. Well, thanks for coming on, Jackson. It was fantastic having you on. And best of luck for 2014.
Thank you very much for having me, Rick and Craig. It's been great to be on.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
Rick,
thanks,
as always,
Jackson.
mate.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. Pleasure.
Have a good one.
You too.
See you later.
Not a long kick of the ball. Think about going short. He's got Lobe inside 50. Ignores that. Keeps it low. Wingard takes off. Hands it up the boat. The captain sees Westhoff. He's in the square. He doesn't need him.